A disaster is unfolding south of the border. A powerful magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck central Mexico today, southeast of Mexico City. Panicked residents poured into the streets as buildings crumbled. Many others were trapped in the rubble. The death toll quickly reached triple digits, and the frantic search goes on for lives that can be saved.
Channel 5's Leslie Aguilar spoke with several people in Mexico City. Leslie, what have you found out?
Oscar, right now it's still chaos down there. Authorities again say at least 104 people are confirmed dead so far. People who survived the quake still fear for their safety because there's no electricity, limited cell service, and structures everywhere are cracked and unstable.
A massive earthquake striking central Mexico, particularly in and around Mexico City. What we know right now is it had registered 7.1 on the Richter scale in the town of Rebozo, 76 miles southeast of Mexico City. Of course, no stranger to these type of calamities. Clouds of smoke could be seen in Mexico City and around buildings that appeared to simply collapse. Office buildings shaken and a lot of windows shattered, as were a lot of people in those buildings a little shaken up as well. Let's get the latest read from Rick Astor, the former Seismology Society of America president. Rick, this area is no stranger to earthquakes. They had one that was fairly significant just a couple of weeks ago, but this in a much more populated region. What can you tell us, and what does this tell you about what happens now?
Yeah, well, you're correct. This was very different than the other recent earthquake. In Mexico, it wasn't a highly populated area. It was a fairly large earthquake, 7.1, certainly very significant. It was rather deep. That is, the place where the fault slipped was over 30 miles below the surface, so that reduced the potential damage somewhat, but we are looking at a very significant earthquake here in Mexico.
This particular one here, and of course what we're seeing about the buildings, some holding up well, others not. Now, they had been girding for this and preparing for this, much like you have a lot of communities that were in the path of hurricanes, getting to be more hurricane resistant, or at least deal with them. Mexico's had to deal with that as well, but it's sometimes luck of the draw, right?
That's right, and Mexico has made strides. This is not going to be nothing like the 1985 earthquake, which occurred exactly on this date.
That's right.
In Mexico City. However, there's a lot of old construction in Mexico, and it takes many decades to make your building stock more resilient.
And, you know, it's always just that luck, too, of where you are. It's such a densely populated city and area. When you look at the fallout from something like this, there are always aftershocks, I guess, Rick. I mean, what do you envision here? What do Mexicans have to look out for in the area region?
Well, there'll certainly be strong aftershocks. There's a small chance of another very strong earthquake, although it's not a high probability. But approximately 10 million people felt strong ground motion in this earthquake, and we are anticipating casualties, and we're already seeing early indications of that. It's a significant event in Mexico. It's certainly not a worst case, but we're girding ourselves for some difficult times for the Mexican people in recovering from this.
It began to shake at 1:14 and felt like it would never stop. This one seemed like the big one. We lost all communication, no cell phone, no landline, no internet, no electricity. In other Mexico City neighborhoods, at least 24 buildings caved in, crashing to the ground while people on the streets looked on and ran. The roofs of 2 elementary schools caved in. Children are still trapped inside. Rescue workers and ordinary citizens are trying to remove the rubble. Many people are injured here, and even more still feeling panicked. Everywhere there are people on the streets and small piles of concrete and debris. This quake was not as powerful as the one that hit exactly 32 years ago today, killing 10,000 people, but this time the epicenter was much closer.
We are getting word, Anthony, that there are dozens of children trapped in a school which collapsed. There are rescue workers there and just ordinary people, neighbors coming out on the street digging. We're just getting the full picture here. We don't know the extent of the damage, but as I walk down Mexico's main avenue tonight, Reforma Avenue, I can tell you there are thousands of people out on the street gazing up at cracked buildings.
Adrienne Bard in Mexico City. Thank you, Adrienne.
Right now, I'm on the street, and as you can see behind me, traffic is still slow, and many people are out on the streets after this powerful earthquake hit. Many people were scared to go back inside. It was a scary moment, as you can imagine, and it was a powerful one. The movement was a bit different because when you are used to an earthquake that goes side to side, this one was actually going up and down. The floor was like shaking violently. Everyone had to go outside. Lampposts, cables, buildings were shaking violently. So you had this feeling that something was going to fall on top of you. Many buildings in the city, as you may have seen in those strong images that went around on social media, many buildings were reduced to rubble. Just a few moments ago, we were there looking at a live rescue operation. We had to remove ourselves because the police, the military, the Red Cross was working. We were being told that dozens of people were trapped inside that building. A few managed to be rescued, but this is an ongoing rescue effort that is likely going to carry on for the night. And unfortunately, the death toll, though it is at about 137 people right now, it is likely to rise in the coming hours.
And you know, and the other thing is the gas lines can rupture because of the movement of the ground. There's so many variables there, plus aftershocks. That's always a matter of concern when you go through an earthquake, that these things come through, and it really does something to your mental capacity in terms of your psyche, having to deal with the aftershocks that come after an earthquake like this.
Yeah, the aftershock is a big problem, not only for residents, but also for rescue operations, because as they dig through rubble, there is always a risk to put more lives at risk when they are actually looking to save people. So aftershock is a big problem. There is also gas leaks around the city. When I was walking around this afternoon, I could feel gas, smell gas heavily. Restaurants, businesses had to close their doors. So these are the main concerns right now. As I said, a few hours after the earthquake, people are still staying out on the streets. I think they feel the place is the safest right now. And as you remember, we've had another earthquake, another strong one just 10 days ago that killed around 100 people. And today marks the 22nd anniversary of the 1985 earthquake. So as Mexicans were commemorating the dead of this historical earthquake, they had to deal with another one. So September 19th will remain a very sad day for Mexicans.
Absolutely. Anne Laurent live for us in Mexico City. Thanks so much.